My name is Geoff Millard. I'm the Washington, D.C. chapter president of Iraq Veterans Against the War. I spent 9 years in the New York Army National Guard. 13 months of that was spent as a sergeant in Operation Iraqi Freedom, stationed at Forward Operating Base Spiker the majority of that time. At the end of my tour of duty and at the end of my military career, I went UA for 9 months. They mailed me my honorable discharge in May of 2007. It's no surprise for anyone who's been in the military since September 11th, especially not for those of us who have been deployed since September 11th, that the word Haji is used to dehumanize people, not just of Iraq and Afghanistan, but anyone there who is not us. We bought Haji DVDs at the Haji shops from the Hajis that worked there. The KBR employees that did our laundry that were from Pakistan became Hajis. The KBR employees who worked inside of our chow halls became Hajis. Everyone that was not a U.S. force became a Haji. Not a person, not a name, but a Haji. I used to have conversations with members of my unit, and I would ask them why they use that term, especially members of my unit who are people of color. It used to shock me that they would, and their answers were very similar almost always, and that was, they're just Hajis, who cares? And that came from ranks as low as mine, sergeant, all the way up to lieutenant colonel in my unit. The highest ranking officer that I ever heard use these words was the highest ranking officer during my deployment in Iraq, General Casey. During a briefing that my unit, the 42nd Infantry Division Rear Operations Center at FOB Spiker, gave to General Casey, I heard him refer to the Iraqi people as Hajis. I've heard several generals, including the 42nd Infantry Division Commander, General Toledo, and my own general that I worked for, Brigadier General Sullivan, use these terms in reference to the Iraqi people. These things start at the top, not at the bottom. I have one story that I want to share with you. One of the most horrifying experiences of my tour that still stays with me was during a briefing that I gave. It was actually in the early summer of 2005. For those who've deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan, we know that a year becomes a month becomes a day, and a day becomes a second that repeats over and over and over again, not just for your tour, but the rest of your life. So I wish I could name the exact date, but unfortunately, that day has become a second that is repeated and repeated and repeated. But on a day in the early summer of 2005, in the area of operation of the 42nd Infantry Division, there was a traffic control point shooting. Traffic control point shootings are rather common in Iraq. They happen on a near or daily basis. What happened was a vehicle was driving very quickly towards a traffic control point. A young machine gunner made the split-second decision that that vehicle was a threat, and in less than a minute, put 200 rounds from his .50 caliber machine gun into that vehicle. That day, he killed a mother, a father, and 2 children. The boy was age 4, and the daughter was age 3. Now, I was in the briefing that evening when it was briefed to the general, and after the officer in charge briefed it to the general in a very calm manner, Colonel Rochelle of the 42nd Infantry Division, DISCOM commander, turned in his chair to the entire division-level staff, and he said, and I quote, "If these fucking Hajis learned to drive, this shit wouldn't happen." I looked around the TOC at the other officers, at the other enlisted men, mostly higher enlisted. As a sergeant, I think I was the lowest ranking person in that room. And I didn't see one dissenting body language, one disagreeing head nod. Everyone was in agreement that it's true. If these effing Hajis learned to drive, this S wouldn't happen. I couldn't believe it, but it was true. That stayed with me the rest of my tour. I looked around every time that word Haji was used, and I thought about that soldier who will carry that with him for the rest of his life, and I thought about the 4 Iraqis whose bloodline was ended on that day. And Colonel Rochelle could not think of any of that, but only his own racism and dehumanization that has started at the commander-in-chief of this war and worked its way down the entire chain of command. I would like to thank my fellow panelists and everyone who has testified and offered testimony that will not be heard publicly for Winter Soldier, Iraq and Afghanistan eyewitness accounts of the occupation. It has been the utmost honor, more honor than I ever gained from putting on a uniform, to sit up here with the greatest patriots of American history. Thank you.